Our next panel is going to similarly ground truth some of our understandings of, in this case, the Upper Colorado River, the headwaters, and transmountain diversions. Grand County has been heavily impacted by transmountain diversions. Grand County's ground zero for the transmountain diversion of water for municipal as well as agricultural use on the Front Range. It's a fact of life. We've long recognized that we, in fact, the Colorado River District was formed because of. And as we speak, coalitions in Grand County are working on both sides of the divide on repairs that try to marry these concerns to bring environmental concerns, transmountain concerns and interests, recreational concerns into a coordinated solution. Our next panel, I'll introduce very briefly in the interest of time. Lurleen Underbrink-Curran is the recently retired manager for Grand County. Melly Whiting, Colorado Council to Trout Unlimited, and Paul Bruchet, a rancher in the Kremling area, also a fishing guide and a very active member of the Colorado River Basin Roundtable, are going to talk about what we're doing in the Upper Colorado River in Grand County in the vicinity of Kremling to address the issues. Lurleen first.
Move this thing up.
Turn it the other way. There you go. Forward and then a laser.
Okay, thanks. Good morning, and thank you for being here to hear our story. We think it's a good one. I'll just start off. This is a map of, it may be a little bit hard for you to see, but I don't know. Oh, this is the Continental Divide. This is Grand County for the most part. Right here is the diversion area for the Denver system, which goes through the Moffett Tunnel to the eastern slope. And right here is what we call the CBT project, or in Grand County we call the Three Lakes system. It goes through the Alva B. Adams Tunnel to northern Colorado for agriculture, municipal, and industrial use. We are the most affected county in the state of Colorado for transmountain diversions. Once the Denver firming project is done, the Denver Moffett firming project, and the Windy Gap firming project is complete, 80% of the water that originates from here on up to the Continental Divide, 80% of the water that originates in Grand County will leave Grand County before we see it, touch it, drink it, use it, whatever you may want to do with it. Now you may think that's really good of us to allow that, participate in it, whatever you may want to say. But just to quote someone I like very much, honey, goodness has nothing to do with this. This is just a quick overview of the Moffett collection system. This is the pipe, gravity feeds to the eastern slope. This is the Moffett Tunnel, and as you can see, a train also utilizes that tunnel. This is a hydrograph that I think is quite interesting. This is pre-Moffett project. This is what we're dealing with today, and this is on the rising limb of the hydrograph. That's what everyone always says. We're going to trim the shoulders off the rising limb of the hydrograph. Well, there's not much shoulder left to trim, and when this project comes into place, this is what we'll have left on the rising limb of the hydrograph. So we go from about 200 CFS to below about 25 CFS in the Fraser and its tributaries, and that's a huge difference in a river system and what it can support. This is the Fraser River after diversions and below the Moffett system. As you can see, it's fairly wide for the amount of water that's remaining in there, and it's very, very shallow. Here's another picture of it. And something that we're quite proud of, when President Eisenhower was president in 1955, he used to come to the Fraser Valley to fish quite often. In fact, the Fraser Valley was referred to as the Western White House. When President Eisenhower came to fish there, the Fraser River was still fairly wild and still fairly free, and it was an excellent, excellent fishery. However, just a small antidote. In 1955, there was 2.5 billion people on Earth. Today, there's over 7.5 billion people on Earth. Now, we may want to say that all of that increases on the eastern slope, and we know that's not true, but in our minds, that's the way that we look at it in Grand County. But that being said, the huge growth that has occurred on the eastern slope has made a huge difference on when President Eisenhower came to visit and what we have today. This is a bronze statue that the Fraser Valley has erected, and this is really quite a picture of what he's dealing with today. In his day, he would have been standing at least up to his knees and would have been fishing. This is the Colorado Big Thompson project. These are the 3 lakes. This is Granby Reservoir, and please note that I'm referring to it as a reservoir. People always call it Lake Granby and Shadow Mountain Lake. They are not lakes, they are reservoirs. This is the only lake. This is Grand Lake, which is Colorado's largest natural lake. Grand Lake, we are fond of saying, was conscripted into the CBT project. Water flows from, oops, sorry. Uh-oh. Now I'm really screwed. Sorry. Water flows this way, down through Shadow Mountain, stored in Lake Granby, and when they need it, it's pumped backwards, back through the system, and to the Alva B. Adams Tunnel, which is right there to northern Colorado. This is just a quick shot of Granby Reservoir. And then the last project I want to talk about is the Windy Gap Project. The Windy Gap Project belongs to the Northern Colorado Water Conservancy District's municipal subdistrict. That project is just west of the town of Granby. This is Highway 40, running out of the town of Granby, running westward. And the old river channel came through here and then just kind of followed where the highway is and came down through here. As you can see, Windy Gap is a very wide and shallow reservoir. In the runoff, when it's pumping, we still, most times, get a fairly good flow out of the reservoir. But in the times when it's not pumping and it's low river, the water that comes into the reservoir has to be discharged through the reservoir. But as you can see, it takes a while to migrate across this big wide area. It's about 12 feet deep in most areas. It gets very warm, and it doesn't move sediment. It doesn't help the fishery. It doesn't do anything that a natural river channel would do. This is an on-channel reservoir. This is the Windy Gap Dam. It is over 30 feet in height, and it's over 320 feet long. So it is quite an impediment to the Colorado River. This is just a shot below Windy Gap at low flow. This is another interesting hydrograph. This is pre-project, Moffett and CBT. This is what we're dealing with today, and here's what we'll deal with after the 2 projects come into being. As you can see, we go from about 3,500 CFS down to about 500 CFS, and that's at good times. So again, a huge impact to where we live and the river systems that we all love. This is just a real quick photo. This was pre-project at Hot Sulphur Springs. I think some of you know where that is, and here's how it is today. Now that's a lovely sunset, but that river doesn't look anything like that one. This is below Windy Gap. I hope you can see this is all moss that's in the river. It's not very deep. It's very warm in the summer months. And we have a really hard time with the fishery and with temperature in that area, with flushing flows. In fact, the Windy Gap Reservoir has blocked the migration of fish. When I grew up in Grand County, I've raised my kids there, and my grandkids are being raised there. There was a time you could walk in the river anywhere up to Lake Granby and just shuffle your feet along, and you could just, stoneflies would just come up out of the water. there is basically no stone flies, clear down to almost where Paul is working on the ILBK project now. The sculpin have disappeared, and rainbow trout and brown trout cannot migrate up this river. And they used to go clear up the Fraser, clear up to where President Eisenhower fished. Fish used to come from down here and migrate up the Fraser. So we have a huge impediment, and what I'm trying to do is just show you the impact that we are dealing with, and we're going to go over what we've done to take care of this huge, huge problem in Grand County, besides losing 80% of the water that is originated there. This again is a hydrograph close to the Troublesome River, which is just downriver from the Williams Fork. This is the ILVK project. Paul will explain this to you, but in Senate Document 80, that set up the Colorado Big Thompson Project, which formed the River District, which formed the Northern District. There were what was referred to as irrigators in the lands of the vicinity of Kremling. And I grew up with a lot of those old guys, and believe me, they're curmudgeons, and they're great to have around. And their families are on those properties now. And they were flood irrigators. The Colorado River flooded all over their property, and they didn't have to divert. They didn't do anything. Well, when the CBT project came in place, the Bureau of Reclamation built them this pump system, which was, what, 70 years ago, 75 years ago. As you can see, that pump isn't close to the water anymore, and those pumps have not been replaced or repaired, except what my dad did. My dad had a machine shop in Kremling, and what the ranchers themselves did in all those years. And that's part of the problem that Paul's going to be talking about here pretty quickly. This is a shot of the river below the pumps. So here's what we were into. We were into turf wars. We were fighting the east slope. We wanted to have some water. We wanted to restore our environmental habitat. We wanted our ranchers to be able to actually reach their water in the river. It would come time for them to take their water. Well, state engineer would say, your water's out there, but the pumps didn't get to it anymore. So what are you going to do? Your water's there, go get it. That was part of our big problem. And so we were having turf wars. But how do you win? All of us know the population center is on the east slope, the water's on the west slope, and when you finally get to court, who's got the money and who's going to win when everything is said and done? We had to think of a different way to address all the problems I've just shown you. So what did we do? We tried to form friendships and cooperations that would help those that have the money and have the water to help us do better with what we have. We have the Colorado River Cooperative Agreement. We had the Windy Gap IGA, the Windy Gap Bypass Agreement, the consensus on the 1041 permit, which Grand County issued for the Windy Gap firming project. We have Learning by Doing, which Mellie's going to explain to you. And we have the 5412 water, which is water for the endangered fish that I'll be telling you a little bit more about here in a few minutes. Here are all the partners that we put together and formed foundations, got money with, have people participating with. This is unheard of in today's scenarios, this kind of cooperation, east slope to west slope, all of us trying to do the best, and everybody's needs being met the very best way that they can. So I've given you an overview of the problems, and now we're going to tell you what we did to take care of them. And Mellie's going to go from here.
Let me see if I know how this works. Do you have the pointer?
Make sure you write it up. Yeah, that should.
No, the pointer.
Oh, the pointer.
Okay, great. Make sure that works. Okay, great. Well, thank you and good morning. I get to do the fun part, talk about what we've done with all this partnerships that have brought us an opportunity to really protect and even improve about 130 miles of streams within the headwaters of the Colorado River. Just to give you a sense here, the area that we're talking about, Let me see, make sure I'm pointing to the right thing here. I'm sorry, I'm not seeing this, I think. There we go. So, okay, so we start at the headwaters of the Fraser River, all the way down to the confluence to the Colorado River, all the way down to Kremlin, and all the way down. I went as far as that Sarah, but we have some form of cooperative effort and projects going on all the way down to Glenwood Springs. When you include the tributaries, it's about 140 to 150 miles of streams that we're protecting. I'm going to start at the very top here. Again, going here at the very top of the Fraser River watershed. And I'm going to talk a little bit about learning by doing. Learning by doing, which you probably have heard a little bit about in the past, it's really an adaptive management program. We monitor streams, in the aquatic habitat, we figure out where there are problems, we prioritize where the problems are, and we deploy resources to fix them, fix existing problems, and maybe take steps to protect the streams from future problems as the new projects are going to be diverting more water in the future. So what kind of resources do we count on? We have water, and I'm going to give you an example. As part of the Colorado River Cooperative Agreement, Denver Water has committed 1,000 acre-feet of water for the Fraser River Valley. We can use that water to deal with low-flow problems. And we have, in fact, used some of that water over the last couple of seasons in a very effective and very successful way. We have operational flexibility. Denver Water, as you saw that picture of the Moffett collection system, pretty much can take water from most tributaries of the Fraser River. And operational flexibility consists of, if we have one stream that is showing it's a little too much sediment, it needs a little bit of a flush, then Denver Water has the ability to say, okay, we'll back off from that one for about 3 days, give it a little flush, make it a little better. That's an example of operational flexibility. Very valuable. And then we have money for on-the-ground projects. And I'm going to talk about a project that we just completed, our very first project, the Fraser Flats project. And these are projects designed to really reshape the streams to adjust to the reality that we have a whole lot less water than we used to have. And as part of adaptive management, of course, we monitor what we've done to see if we've made improvements and learned from that experience for the next time. The Fraser Flats project is it's, again, the first Learning by Doing project. We're very proud of it. It took us a little while to plan it. But Fraser Flats is basically an area between the town of Fraser and the town of Tabernash that is pretty flat. Again, the problem when you have a very wide channel with very little water, not a whole lot of riffles and pools that are fish habitat. So what we've done in that case, and we're working with Freestone, who's an extremely, really competent consultant, we just finished up doing work there. What we've done is create a low-flow channel. So basically you have the ability, and we created a low-flow channel and we built some riffle and pool habitat to really recreate a river at a lower flow with a healthy fishery, and that's kind of what it looks like. He's actually finishing up. This work was done about 3 days ago, was completed. The other thing we did is we planted willows. We had 150 volunteers that came over a period of 3 days to harvest and plant willows and cottonwoods. It really became a community project. The Fraser Flats project is also a private-public partnership. About 40%, no, more like 60% of the river is about a 1 mile long reach of the river. About 60% of that, 60% of that is private. And so that allowed us to maximize our dollars, plus allow us to do work on private lands, on private sections of the river that are problematic. So that was very, very successful. We're looking forward to start counting the bugs and looking at the improvement. Okay, I'm going to jump down then to I'm going to jump down then to the around the here, the confluence of the Fraser River and the Colorado River and the bypass. So I'm going to talk about 3 projects there. I'm going to mention 2 of them because Lurleen and Paul are going to talk in more detail. Starting with the Windy Gap Reservoir bypass at Windy Gap. That's the goal of that project, is to reconnect the river downstream and upstream of the reservoir, and it is an absolutely critical project. And again, Lurleen will talk about that a little bit more. The Colorado River Habitat Restoration Project, and show this a little bit more. Where am I? Okay. It's this in blue. There is about up to $7 million available through Denver Water and Northern's fish and wildlife enhancement plans associated with their projects. There will be available to do some stream improvement. Parks and Wildlife has taken the lead on that. We don't know exactly what that's going to look like. It's being developed, but probably will have a lot to do with same thing that we did in the Fraser Flats area, which is creating low-flow channels to allow the river to function with less water. And then finally, it's the green. That's the ILVK project, which Paul will talk about, and that's it's basically shows how you can actually improve conditions for irrigation and at the same time improve stream conditions for aquatic life. Very exciting. Okay. I wanted to mention just quickly another effort that is going on, and that is the okay, from Kremling all the way down, again, I ran out of room here, but to Glenwood Springs, there's an effort called the Upper Colorado Wild and Scenic Stakeholder Group effort. This area was proposed for potential by BLM and the Forest Service for potential wild and scenic designation. The River District initiated a dialogue to see if we wanted to go that way or if maybe there was a better way to manage that river. We opted to try to manage that river at the local level with all the partners, a lot of the same partners that you saw there, plus a few more. And that project is, the purpose is to protect the 2 outstanding values that BLM and the Forest Service identified, which are, there are other values, but the primary ones we're focusing on are fishing recreation and boating recreation. That process has been going on for quite a while, and again, another adaptive management kind of system. I'm sorry, Paul. It took a lot of time. I'm going to stop there and just introduce Paul here to talk about the ILVK project. Thank you.
A minute to good afternoon now. When Jim asked if I'd participate with this, I said the only way I'd do it is if I could be the one that extended into lunch hour while people thought they would be eating and instead listen to me talk. So I'm glad it worked out that way. So the ILVK, I'm going to run through this. It's a lot of information, and I'm going to run through quick to respect time. We are a 12-mile stretch of the Colorado River from the KB Ditch down to Gore Canyon. and then 2 miles of the Blue River. As explained earlier, this was done when the Colorado Big Thompson project was developed. These lands naturally irrigated, and post-project they knew, you saw the hydrograph, they were cutting it off, so they installed irrigation systems for us. The problem with that is that we've seen continued water takes from transmountain diversions over the years from that time frame. So the shortest summary of this is that the early 2000s drought, it's death by 1,000 cuts, but that's the first time in that stretch of river that landowners realized we can no longer irrigate. We had some very large-scale problems going into the future. We were staring that at the same time that Denver and Northern were completing their firming projects, knowing that we even had less water coming in future years. We had pumps in the river that literally wouldn't operate. Northern came in 2004 in response to this. We built some rock drop structures that ended up causing additional damage to the river system. And we were a giant mess. Unorganized landowners with very different opinions of how to move forward and what was the correct response to all of this. And the one thing that the landowners agreed to is that we needed to evaluate it as a system. We had seen enough work done in the river over time that one neighbor's efforts impacted another, and that these weren't individual ranchers or individual irrigation diversion points, that the river functioned as a system. And so we went to the Colorado Basin Roundtable. We asked them for some financial assistance to implement an assessment of the upper Colorado River. That showed that we had two very large-scale problems. The hydrograph, we used to peak over 6,000 CFS. Now we're going to peak under 1,000. And two, there was a giant oxbow of the river that was removed in the early 1900s, and about a 300-foot stretch was dredged out. That made the river very unhappy with its velocities and slopes. And what happened is it started a head cut that's been working up system ever since then. Approximately 22 to 24 inches the water table has dropped within the river as it was. While we were going through the assessment time frame, the crustiest of all the Kremling ranchers came to us and said that he was going to irrigate next year, so we needed to provide a solution, or he was going to come up with one. And so we said we better get to work. I sat down with the engineers for some long brainstorming sessions. And what we knew was that there used to be riffles in this stretch of the river. We knew the river had incised 22 to 24 inches. We knew there used to be great habitat. And instead of letting the rancher go in a typical way of tires or perhaps recycled concrete, other means of doing this, or extending our pump intakes and chasing the water down, that we needed to have another solution. And so we determined that we would take pump intakes that look like this, that were sucking air, and construct them to look like this. That's not a change in elevation of the pump intake, that's a change of elevation of the river, by taking a stretch of river that looked like this and making it look like this. Unfortunately, they wouldn't let a couple cowboys go in the river and start pitching rock to develop this. We studied slopes, velocities, scour depths, everything that we could of what were agreed upon, that the healthiest existing remaining riffles in the Colorado River. So these were designed in mimic of that, and it's interesting how the healthy riffles that still exist had kind of developed and created their own low flow channel. So these structures then, mimicked by nature, now are elevated to the same water table that existed prior to the head cut existing. So we have stretches of river that look like this. That's actually supposed to be an irrigation ditch along the edge of the riverbank, and instead it's a riverbank. We've made them look like this and moved the irrigation ditch back. The producer is now once again irrigating. We've taken stretches of river like this. Again, all these banks that you see is taking all of this fine sediment and covering up all of the cobble and the critical things that the river health needs. And we've made it look like this. All for purposes for families like mine can still produce things like this. And the river can again once produce things like this. And we're starting to see the reaction of these come back to a much healthier system. At present date, the ILVK has received $628,000 from the Colorado Basin Roundtable and the CWCB for our restoration efforts. Landowners have contributed over $900,000, and these are projects that are either in the ground or currently being constructed. And we are very excited to now be connected to the Colorado Headwaters Project, which is the bypass and the restoration project that we are the low end of. And Melly will go into more detail now of our future. Here's our future. We're very excited. We have the pieces in place to do a lot of work. Our gaps are not filled. We have some more funding that is needed. But it's been amazing to work together in all of this partnership. Thank you all very much.
I'm not Melly, but we skipped over a part, or just bear with us. That's a good part, but. The Windy Gap Bypass Channel. The projects Melly was talking about upriver and what Paul is talking about downriver. The Windy Gap Bypass Channel is the linchpin between both of those projects. This is Windy Gap, as I explained to you before, wide. Here's Highway 40, wide reservoir on channel. This is the dam, we went over that. This is the projected project. We intend to build a berm, which basically cuts the reservoir in half. There'll be a bifurcated head gate down here, which will put some of the water through the reservoir. And then we are constructing a new natural channel that will go here, and part of the water will be put down that channel every year. The dam will come out here, and the fish and the bugs will be able to migrate back up the stream as they did years and years ago. And this is something that's really near and dear to my heart. I believe that this is one of the most important projects on the river. How many times have you seen a reservoir taken off channel without litigation, without fighting, without years and years of all kinds of things going on in order to make it happen, and somebody wins and somebody loses? This way, both sides win, both sides get to do what they were supposed to do, and we're restoring the health of the river. Now, you might say, this is a conceptual picture of what the bypass channel will look like. Here's the reservoir over here. Well, what if we don't have enough water to put in that channel? Well, just to let you know, we did do some thinking about that. As Melly mentioned, we got 1,000 acre-feet from Denver that we can let go whenever we want. And once it goes down the Fraser River, it just migrates its own way down to the Colorado, which is where this is. All of the water that Grand County bargained for is for the environment. And we made that be stated in all the agreements, because we said we have to save ourselves from ourselves. Because as the future goes on, people forget how hard it was to get what we got and how important it was to get what we got. It just becomes norm. And so we said everything has to go for the environment and it can't go for anything else. And one of the most important things that I'm proud of is where are we going to put water? We don't have any place to put it. So in the Windy Gap bypass agreement and the Windy Gap IGA, Grand County and Middle Park Water Conservancy District have 7,000 acre-feet of space in Granby Reservoir to store water. We can pump water from Windy Gap when they're either done pumping or it's a free river. We do have to pay for that pumping, but in the CRCA, we get $1 million from Denver to pay for half of that pumping every year. And the most important piece that goes unnoticed is what I call the 10825 water, or 5412.5 where I live. But it's for the endangered fish down here in the valley. And that water is going to come out of Lake Granby to be released at the most important times of the year. And the fact that if the endangered fish either recuperate or go belly up, is what I like to say, or the Endangered Species Act goes away and you don't need that water anymore, the agreement with Grand County and the Northern District is that water is perpetual to us to be released for the environment if it is not needed for the endangered fish. So we not only going to get the bypass channel, we're going to have water to put in and over and above what's there today.
All right, so just to close it, let's go back to, I kind of panicked. I thought we were out of time. Just get to this last slide. Okay, so this is the pitch. We still need money. The Windy Gap bypass, we have raised $10 million, and part of this, and this is about $5.5 million, was part of the RCPP Regional Conservation Partnership Program through the NRCS, that we put Paul's, the ILVK project, the Habitat project in between that I talked about, the $6 million, and the bypass into one big regional project covering 30 miles. We got $7.7 million of that very, very highly competitive grant program in 2016. We have money from Denver, from the CWCB, I'm sorry, from Northern, from the CWCB. We have other sources of money. We're still short. We need probably around an additional $4 million to make the bypass a reality. The other projects are pretty much online. ILVK is a little bit short, but it's one of those that you do as many projects as you can with the money that you have. Right now, our highest need is the bypass, and we're going around to asking support to make that very important project a reality. So that's my plug. Thank you.